Hello and welcome to the Ridiculously Good VA Show with Tracy Daviero. If you are a virtual assistant or want to be one, this is the place to learn the tips and tricks you need to become a ridiculously good VA. I've been a part of the VA industry since 1998, and I'm excited to get to know you and help you build an amazing business. Let's go. Hey there, welcome to another episode of the podcast that teaches you how to be a ridiculously good virtual assistant. Today we're talking about raising your rates the right way. And our quote comes from Maxwell Maltz. Your most important sale is to sell yourself to yourself. It's really hard to find a quote about raising rates, especially these days with inflation and all of the industries that just got nailed by the pandemic. Everything has gone up in price, including service industries. So I went with Maxwell Maltz's quote today because it's so important to be confident about your rates. If you believe that what you are charging is what you are worth, that's going to come through in the confidence that you show your clients in your sales conversations, which is essential to getting that client. Let's go. Today I want to talk about raising your rates. It's a really common conversation in VA circles. I think we're kind of always wondering if our rates are right. I know that a lot of VAs I work with think that their rates are fine where they are, and I think they're too low. So it really is quite subjective. When I work with you, privately or in a group setting, I will almost always suggest raising your rates, but I'll never force you to. At the end of the day, it is your choice. But every decision in your business is easier when you're charging appropriately. Remember, when you're running a business, it is important to build a foundation that you can build on, and the revenue is the engine of your business. One of the most common times I'll suggest raising your rates is when you're trying to bring subcontractors in to work with you. This is something that I work privately with clients on all the time. Your rates need to support paying somebody else to do the work for the clients. Not all the work, of course. You also have to allow for your admin time to manage the client and the sub and everything else. And of course, still pay yourself. But there are all kinds of reasons that you may want to raise your rates. You don't have to be bringing in subs. Here are a few. Your demand is too high. If you are booked out, then you have maxed out the amount of money that you can earn. So you do need to think about raising your rates if you are packed with clients at a current rate. If you know other VAs who are offering similar services and charging higher rates, now this is not always the way to do it, but if you are kind of the one left out in left field because you're not charging as much as other people for the services you're offering, it's important to address it. The cost of business is increasing. If you are bringing in expenses, never mind subcontractors, but if you're putting together automation or if you have, additional expenses that you are going to be incurring in your business, or if you're working with a coach or joining a training, taking training or joining a mastermind group, like the virtual circle, if your cost of running your business is increasing, then you need to find that revenue to pay for those things. Inflation, as I already mentioned, it's ridiculous, but it is affecting everybody. And so even if you don't think that your service offerings need to go up, everything that you're paying for in your life has gone up. And so it is really important to make sure that you're bringing that in on the other end. If you're working too many hours and not earning what you need to earn, if you get to the end of the week or the month and you're realizing that it's not enough and you really are working as much as you can, it's time to think about raising your rates. If you aren't making a profit, or if your expenses aren't even being covered by your business, or if you're paying your expenses and then you're not able to pay yourself, all of these things are reasons to raise your rates. Also, though, if you haven't raised your rates within a year, that's time too. And if your clients say yes at every sales conversation, if you never get a no, my business coach used to say to me that when I got to an 80% close rate, if 8 out of 10 clients were saying yes, it was time to raise the rates. But whatever your reason, there is a right way to raise your rates, and that's really what I want to talk about today. First of all, I want to make this super clear, okay? You don't owe anybody an explanation as to why you are raising your rates. Yes, we go through that list of why it's important for us to do it, and maybe we'll even make a decision as to why we need to do it, but you don't need to tell anybody else what that is. I want you to really keep that in mind. It's amazing to me, as I was doing research for this episode, I found two kinds of articles. One of them was for business owners, and the other one was for, or the other type was for virtual assistants. And I have to say, I was so disappointed to see most of the VA articles talking about negotiating with clients, or asking the clients their opinion, or writing them a really detailed email with reasons as to why you would raise their rate. And it's so discouraging to me as a coach because I just don't think it's necessary. I know it's not necessary. It's nobody's decision what your rates are except yours. And I'm going to say it again, you don't owe anybody an explanation as to why you are charging what you're charging. I even saw one article that said that men won't bat an eye when they change their rates, but women are the ones that really have to explain it. They need to do that to feel better about it. Oh, I didn't like that at all. So many VAs start their business charging too little anyway, and that's a completely different issue. But that's going to be a decision that you need to make at some point, is to raise them. So not only by setting your rates incorrectly the first time are you setting yourself up for a struggle, but you're going to have this conversation. You're going to have this money conversation with somebody twice instead of just once. So we want to make sure that we're doing this sooner rather than later. Money is a 100% a confidence thing, and a confidence thing in conversations. Many of us were taught never to talk about money as we were growing up, and maybe that's where the hesitation comes from. But I also think it's what I always tell you, that being in our corporate roles, we're simply used to somebody else being in charge of everything, including how much we get paid. And that in the support role that we filled as administrative assistants, we didn't get taught how to value what we do and to set a price for it, right? We filled a role, and especially if you came from government, they assign a bunch of letters to your job, and this is the rate that you get paid. So it is in business something you need to learn, and it's something that I teach you to do the math setup using my rate calculator. And I do that. I have the rate calculator and I send you to it because I want you to understand why you can charge what you charge. And now I'm going to teach you how to raise those rates too. First of all, if you haven't done the math, and go and download my rate calculator like right now, just pause the podcast and go get that link. I'll put it in the show notes for you. Make sure that you go and do those calculations. It's so important for you to understand how much you need to charge so you don't have to raise your rates every time you turn around. And once you know how much you should be charging, then you have to figure out which client has to be increased and by how much. When I was working with VA clients, I started charging $25 per hour. Now, yes, that was 24 years ago, people, so you should not be charging $25 an hour now. I was happy with that rate, but I couldn't grow my business at all, charging such a low rate. And I was billing about 30 hours a week, which is very full time, knowing that we also have business things that we need to do in our week. I was only bringing in $875 a week, which after taxes and before expenses is only about $600. Now, to be running a business full time and only bringing in around $2,000 or $2,400 a month is not very much. Then as I added clients and I raised my rates for the new folks, but I left my old ones at the old rate simply because I honestly didn't know how to approach the conversation, which is maybe where you're sitting right now. And like you, I thought it was fine to leave them at my older rate. What I was really doing was avoiding that conversation. And then a year passed, and another year passed, and I still didn't raise them. It was so dumb. By the time my regular rate for my new clients was $40 per hour, I still had a bunch of my old clients at $25. And the more I worked for them, the less money I made from them and from my higher paying clients. I'm all for being nice and building a relationship with my clients. I love long-term clients, but business is business. It's not personal. And guess what? Over the years that I worked with those clients and I didn't raise their rates, they were busy raising their rates for their own clients. So they were doing better business than I was. And here I was still sitting at too low a rate. And yes, I also was a way better VA a few years in than when I started with them. So I absolutely made these mistakes. That's why I teach you the things that I teach you. I don't want you to make those same mistakes, at least not for the length of time that I made them. So let's get back to when you last raised your rates. It's one of the first things I'll tell you not to do is raise them too often. So if you did just start working with somebody, unfortunately, I think it's kind of on you to quote the correct rates and then to wait it out. I like to say that you shouldn't raise them more than once a year because people are used to, an annual increase. But if your business or your skills or your service offerings are changing or are up leveled, you can raise them 6 months in. But you don't want to upset or confuse your clients. That's why the math is so important from the start. Go do that rate calculator. So now you have your new rate. You know when you last raised your rate for each client. And next step is to decide when you're going to raise the rates for each of your clients. It does not all have to happen at the same time. You can either raise them with the next retainer. I usually give the clients 30 days notice. So you can give them 60 if that's what you prefer. But once you decide that you're going to do it, make sure that you set that date. Don't wait around months and months and months. If the increase is going to be substantial, you may consider stepping them up. I did this with a client that I was charging $25 an hour for. And when I told her I was raising my rates to $40 an hour, she panicked, of course, because that's a huge increase. But we decided that she would pay $30 the following month, $35 the month after that, and then $37.50 the month after that. I was totally okay to keep her rate slightly lower because she was really a great long-term client, but I had to bridge that gap. And what we did was we took a really good look at what I was doing for her over that 3-month period. And instead of going through the motions and just kind of doing the things we always did, we decided what was most important for her. And we kept those things in her list of things to do. And we got rid of a few other things. And her monthly invoice only really went up incrementally, even though my rate went up. So instead of working for, 20 hours for her, maybe I was working 13 or 14, and it made a big difference to her bottom line as well. And that really worked for both of us. And it was still my decision and my proper rate. So I don't want that to be considered as her having an opinion. That was a negotiation to get her where I needed to be while still making sure that I was doing what she needed me to do. It's about working within that budget to make sure that you're doing what they need at your rate. If you do raise your rates regularly, this isn't going to be an issue for you, but in the event that you have that type of thing happen, I wanted to share a successful way that I handled it. So I hope that made sense. There were some clients that were totally fine with the increase. There were clients who were not, and we had to move them along to other VAs, which is also totally fine. Don't forget that you can get a new client at your new rate, and you're going to be working fewer hours anyway while still making the same money. We don't want to lose clients, but if we haven't managed them properly, then it's sometimes better just to let them go. We don't want to all of a sudden start having money conversations and nitpicking on bills every single month because suddenly it's costing more money to work with you. And the other thing you can do when it's time to raise your rates is to convert your clients to packages. I also did this with a couple of my clients at that time. These clients used to bill approximately the same amount of money every month, about $750 a month. So when it came time to increase that, I told them we'd be going to a package rate for the same services they had previously gotten, but that their monthly rate was going to increase slightly to $900 per month. And then I added in a weekly production call or a new report or a little new something that we weren't doing before, something that didn't take a whole lot more time, but that would help us be more organized or keep an eye on results better, something that would, sort of up level the service that I was providing for them. And the reason that I found that this worked is that the professionalism really was the focus, right? My expertise. The clients I moved to packages made things easy for me to give myself a raise anytime I wanted, because then it wasn't going to be a dollar per hour thing every time I made an increase, but it was a $50 or $100 increase monthly, which is less visible to the client. And the other thing that it's really smart to do is to find ways to work more efficiently or find ways to automate the things that you do so that you can get the work done faster and still earn the same amount of money. That's our profit, right? And the last thing we have to do is inform the clients. And again, I usually suggest to keep this as simple as possible. You do not have to explain to anyone why you're raising your rates. You simply let them know that you are and when the change is going to take place. And if you're proposing a package or have one of the special increase scenarios, obviously that means a conversation. That's just not an email, okay? It's just too much to put into the email. So you make that time to speak with the client and explain things clearly. But a regular increase of, not that much is really just requires an email. And usually what I would do is send that along with the next invoice. So when the invoice gets sent out, you let them know that the next month or the one after that, whichever you've decided, they're going to see an increase to XYZ on their bill. And that's usually sufficient. The only one who ever gets nervous about a regular rate increase announcement, if you want to call it that, is the VA. The clients don't usually worry too much. And if you are raising it a lot, then you have to be more aware of your clients. You don't want to upset them or confuse them. And you probably should be careful to raise your rates only about 20%. And past 20%, that's when you want to get a little bit more conversation going around it. And, look at those task lists like I did with my clients again to keep the client's monthly invoice down, but still giving yourself that increase. The most important thing for you to be clear on is why you are raising your rates. So like I talked about at the beginning of the episode here, if you aren't able to confidently have a discussion with your client, you're going to run the risk of getting pushback. And this is what all of us try to avoid. It's why we avoid the conversation altogether. So ask yourself, why do you need to raise your rates? And answer that question. Believe that you need the increase. Understand why it's important for you to stay in business or to stay profitable in business anyway. And then you're going to have no problem passing the same message along to your clients. And then you also have to be prepared to lose some clients. It's honestly okay though. I had 12 clients whenever I was doing my rate increases. I raised the rates for 6 of them because the other 6 had come in at considerably higher rates. And I kept 4 of those 6 clients. 1 stepped up over the 3 months, like I described. 3 went to packages, like I described. And 2, we moved on within 60 days. I didn't rush them out the door. I didn't raise their rates, but I did help them get somebody else in place or get their business ready to work with somebody else. I made room immediately for 2 new great clients at my new rate. And 6 months later, I was working with a total of only 7 clients instead of 12. And I was earning more money. And you will too. It's a bit of strategy, and a couple of months can pass and things will look totally different. Above all, remember that it is business, it's not personal. And if you've outgrown your clients, that's totally okay. It's going to happen in your business the longer you are in business. Raising your rates is something we can work together on in the Virtual Circle, my mastermind group for virtual assistants. Check it out at yourvamentor.com/TVC, the Virtual Circle. I bet it's exactly what you need to get your revenue where it needs to be and start running a better business. If you need any help with setting or raising your rates, definitely reach out to me at tracy@yourvamentor.com. I've helped hundreds of VAs through their challenges, and I've gotten them on their way to the next thing through my private and group coaching. I would love to do the same for you. That's all I've got for you this week. I will see you next time. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Ridiculously Good VA Show. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss a thing. For more great resources for your VA business, visit my website at yourvamentor.com. I'll see you back here next time.